Welcome to Rewrite the Mother Code, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way that you never have before, but have always needed. It's time to rewrite the mother code. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Rewrite the Mother Code with me, your host, Dr. Gertrude Lyons. Today is one of those special days that I get to meet with Elizabeth Tuazon. If this is your first tuning in to one of the Elizabeth Tuazon episodes, you're in for a treat because I've been following Elizabeth. We have been able to kind of be right real time with her through her pregnancy, birth, and now new mamahood. And I'll tell you, it has been so inspiring, so beautiful, really authentic, real, in the moment. I just can't say enough. And I really want to encourage you, if you haven't listened to all the episodes, to take time to start at the beginning and follow her journey. I would love to hear your reactions. I'd love to hear what you're learning and what's coming up for you as Elizabeth vulnerably and courageously just brings her full self to the show. So without further ado, let's see where we find Elizabeth today. And I can't wait. Well, welcome back, Elizabeth. So great to have you on my podcast for our series.
Thank you. It's really good to be here. Thanks, Gertrude.
Absolutely. Well, I saw you, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Last week for a coaching session. And we're like, there were some things that we were talking about, like, oh yeah, we gotta get back. We gotta record.
Yeah.
And talk about some of these things even more. So
yeah. Let's see. Today is will be 15 weeks postpartum and 15 weeks of life today. And one kind of milestone that we passed not too long ago, it was in the 13th week, was 3 months. 3 months of life. And that it represents like measuring time. If we're measuring time in that particular way, it's like that's the fourth trimester.
Right.
That's the fourth trimester, is like the 13th week and the third month after of postpartum. And I was like, that's really cool for a bajillion reasons. And kind of another transition that I'm doing in my like personal growth work. We have assignments to really work our own things that we have going on. And I've been in the self-created assignment, and I've called it Newborn Retreat for 15 weeks. And I set up the parameters of what I wanted that to look like. But it's still a very free-flowing, emerging kind of experience. But I decided that I wanted to pass that assignment. Pass meaning like finish being in that assignment, not to say I'm going to stop being with an infant child or like stop, but I'm declaring that the retreat part of being with my newborn is like, I feel complete with that. And even like the transition from the word newborn to the word like infant, like that, if we were going to give it a title.
All these things, sure. No, we want to recognize and acknowledge and pay attention and our awareness of the significance of this transition and, this period of time. And so that's, what, and I'm going to have you keep going, but just to underline, all these aspects, like, those just kind of sometimes naturally happen, sometimes not, but marking them is what we want to talk about.
Yeah. So I, even before I had realized and I don't think I even realized that I wanted to mark it until I was like, I think I'm ready, until I said to myself, I think I'm ready to pass that assignment. And then you were like, oh, well, what will you do to mark the assignment pass, like to celebrate, ritualize, ceremonialize? What will that look like? And I was like, I don't know. I hadn't thought about that, because the assignment pass is very there's not like a ritual built in or like a ceremony or celebration. There is a
You
little bit of
reflect, there's some
yeah, there's
reflection
some
and
reflection and some acknowledgement in that like personal growth
sure.
community. But that like doesn't include the baby.
Right.
Like she doesn't come to my class. But so we were going to visit my brother and sister-in-law out of town this weekend, and I asked if they would be willing to, like, as part of our quality time together, support me in like marking the transition and like create kind of a ritualized celebration of some kind. And they were thrilled to support me with that. And the way that I had a few very, like, everyone kind of made some suggestions about like what that could look like. But one of the things I really loved about it is like, it wasn't like, okay, we're going to do like from 2 to 3 o'clock, we're going to do this and this and this. Like, it wasn't like, there was not a schedule. It was just, it really did emerge over the course of the
Nice.
weekend. And like we had a bonfire, and I like spoke about, like, I kind of did I did a verbal reflection over the bonfire as I was holding her. And then like everyone in turn like shared their reflections and wishes and visions, and that alone was lovely. And then the next day, and we found out that it was the new moon. Um,
Ah,
right.
see, I love those
Gosh.
coincidences.
Thanks, universe. My sister-in-law did like a new moon tarot reading that was just, I mean, I would say to die for, but like to live for. Like it was
Yeah.
really just spot on and very impactful for me. And she really did that reading for me as new mother.
Right.
And my brother he like did his own, I had never seen this. It was like a spell casting kind of thing. And I didn't know what he was doing, but he explained everything afterwards. He's like, here's this spell that I'm essentially offering. Like, it's like an invocation to the universe for us. And he did a little bit for me, a little bit for my husband, Ryan, and a little bit for baby Lyla Rose. And it's like, here's my visions, hopes, and intentions for like the energy that I'm sending to you. And he told me, I don't think I really realized this. When we told, like kind of sent the memo, like, hey, we're in labor, ta-da, he did the same.
Oh,
He,
wow.
he really considered what kinds of prayers and intentions do I want to send your way. And he like used this tool to help him verbalize it, kind of, concretize, like, what is it that I wish for you? And it was really, really special. So
That is so beautiful. Well, I want to underline that you said, it's not like then I realized it myself that I'd like to commemorate, honor this phase, this transition. And I'm going to be somewhere with people that would be willing and participants in that and also actually help. And just putting that intention out, you didn't have to then like sit down, like, okay, now what are we going to, like you said,
right,
you had ideas, you had thoughts about what you wanted. And it doesn't mean you can't come up with well, we're going to spend the morning for these few hours, for an hour or 20 minutes
sure.
or 5 minutes, whatever. You can do that. But I just want to speak to the power of intention. And then maybe you would have noticed it was a new moon. I don't know, so both like that intention brings like a specialness of that particular new moon into being, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, whoa, like what? And then you see it as a gift. Like, what a gift. Like, maybe it was a coincidence, maybe not. Maybe things are more aligned than I think. Who knows, right? Like, but it's
Yeah,
still beautiful to acknowledge. And I think that's what's so beautiful about what you're talking about. Just by acknowledging that these gifts came, out of it. And your brother, sharing in this way and, bringing forth this. And I mean, you haven't said specifics about the cards, the new moon reading that you had, but that it really
Yeah.
resonated with you.
I
And
could probably have an entire podcast session talking about that reading.
yeah.
It was
You can hit a
really,
couple highlights.
yeah.
Go ahead and hit a couple highlights. We're fine with that.
Gosh. Well, she was using a particular deck that kind of like the cycle of the new moon reading is like beginnings, progress, manifestations. I'm not recalling the whole spread, but then it kind of cycles back to and new beginnings again. Like what's it's like the first kind of like marking and acknowledging first beginnings all the way to like the next new beginning. And for the first beginning, we had like the Elder of Swords and the way, or like the equivalent of actually I'm not super familiar with
Sure.
in the first place, but
We want to do this respectfully, but understanding that, this isn't like your,
this is not, I'm not an expert. I was the recipient. And the significance that I took away from that is like, that's kind of a marker of like the user and the seeker and the transmission of like knowledge and wisdom. And like really to me reflected, like I came into motherhood, like I did my reading, I did my research, I came in like, I'm going to learn about how this works. And like, I 100% align with that, like just kind of a very high level. There's so much more, but the final card, now the new beginnings, was the Ace of Swords. And like that, my first beginning was like the last card in the suit, and now we're at the first card in the suit is my new beginnings. And it's like a signifier of openness and change, and thinking about something that Ryan said to me just a few days ago. He said, this may not always be true, but I'd like my heuristic for our lives to be openness to adventure, openness to possibility. And rather than like the fear of like, well, what about the baby? Well, what about this? And what about that? And it's like, what if we said yes to the adventures that we want and figured it out from there, even if we didn't know how that it was going to work. Another aspect of the Ace of Swords is like, for me, that for my relevance is like, I'm going to have a career transition in this next quarter, and I don't know what that is going to look like. And that can be really scary. It can be really scary. And another thing we discussed in our session last week is I've just started being excited about, well, what is it that I would like? What is it that I do want? And what, it's seeing it as an opportunity to explore, to like, and explore sounds like it's an external thing, but also like explore for myself. What is it that I am hungry for next in this next season? So that was one highlight. That was really special about the reading.
That's a one big one. And I think I definitely getting that we could, and it would be fun to explore it even more. But just that we've talked about this, but this is something that I really want, muscles I want us to like work on, and why I do my retreats, to take us away and like remember that we can get messages in so many ways, and guidance and support from the new moon, from a friend with the reading, through what your brother was invoking, for you and your family, and the nature. And you mentioned, the bonfire, and the cleansing, purifying, all the different ways you can use fire to invoke a space. And so I feel like I'm there with you in ways, just because you're bringing these elements, to the forefront.
Yeah, I'm very glad for these talks that we've had, these podcasts, is because like it's such a big experience, and like there's no like I was just reading like people write their memoirs and autobiographies and things like that. And the amount that I could write about the richness of the experience that I've had, it'd be too much. It's so much. Could I describe it? Yes. Would it actually capture the experience? A little
Right.
bit.
You can get an idea.
So one of my I don't know, responses to the bigness of the experience is I just kind of like keep it for myself. And that works sometimes, but it's also really, really good for me and really special to share and explore like verbally a little bit. It's just it can help me highlight like what it is that I want to harvest and enrich from the experience and like take next.
Yeah. Well, and it's been great for me
So
too,
yeah,
because
thank you for exploring.
yay, yay, yay. What I loved about this, the conversation that we started, and now even now that you've, been actually doing the celebrating and doing the acknowledging and creating the ritual, I'm just even more struck by. I think there's a book out there now, right? The Fourth Trimester, or it is spoken of a little bit, I think, in the mom atmosphere, but I'm just like, wow, this is really important. Really, really important to designate, like, because we talk so much about like the 3 trimesters of pregnancy, and then like, then you have the baby. Well, okay. And then it just doesn't, to segment this way, and just to see and have been with you, over these 3 months to watch your evolution. It's like, yeah, that was really a trimester's worth of work. And you're in a very different place. You are from the day she was born to today. Right. And I know you mentioned something like, gosh, I wish I
Wow.
hadn't worried so much about certain things, and I don't know that we can avoid that, but I'm thinking that the more we acknowledge, like, what is that? What are some of the essences of that trimester? And there'll be time for that worry, and it's going to come to me more naturally, and I will evolve, more toward that. And I think this was for you mostly around career and business, and what am I doing, after this period of time that I acknowledged. But how do I use that trimester to move me forward? Not in such a, I think where the worry comes from, and you could tell me if this is true for you, but my theory now in this is we're thinking of it in such a masculine term. What am I going to do when
Yep.
in this next phase versus, when I'm in probably one of the most ultimate being spaces that I may or may not access in my life, but I am in nurture, be, protect, nest, hold this space. And it probably really isn't what we should be thinking about. I don't know, like there's a certain level of trust that's needed for that. Because I don't know that we could have it planned ahead of time. Well, I'm going to have that all figured out so that during, that trimester, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the, I had another thing to note is like I've now had my first full week back in some part-time work post maternity leave, and like I am so grateful that I had the leave that I had, and I get, oh gosh, speaking of the masculine and the urge to be productive, it's so much part of the ethos of the world that we're swimming in, that when you step back and even just look at maternity, or let's say like parental leave from work and how that's treated in the States versus like other places in the world, it's like, oh, okay, right, we want to get back to the doing. That is the culture that we're in.
Yeah.
And I'm in it. I'm part of that fabric of society, and I can see like how being back at work or in a space of like having tasks and like things to do very differently from in like how fourth trimester went for me. Like having things to do has in some ways been really good for me in terms of like, it's hard to describe the like, okay, I have another place to be. another place to be, another way of being that I'm exercising that hasn't been exercised for a little while. And then that feels good. Like, oh yes, I have other gifts.
Yeah.
I have other skills. That's cool to remember.
Yeah. To remember, right? Like
yeah. And also, like, I completely now see, having been in this transition, I completely now see how people, usually women, go from being very career oriented to being stay-at-home moms. Like, how I was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, in a way that I think it never could have if I hadn't had a fourth trimester where I was really on leave. I'm like, wow, I really like being here. I really like being here. And that doesn't mean it's always easy. That doesn't mean I like every single second. But globally, like, we just on this call right before we hit record, I was, you saw me with the baby.
I didn't want to leave the baby. It's like, okay, do we have to do a recording, or can we just stare at the baby?
Yeah, it's like so cool to be with her. And that is still part of my job as one of her primary caregivers, and like as her mother, is like, and I'm so glad that that's one of my jobs. It's unbelievable how cool I find it to, like, be with this baby. Like, I have this experience of myself. Like, I didn't think I was even one of my irrational fears of becoming a mother was like, oh, I'm not even really like a baby person. Like, I don't even really like babies that much in general. But boy, oh boy, do I love this one. Speaking of liking ways of being, I like that with my like friends who have their children. I'm like, oh yes, I love to hear about them. I love to see your pictures. I love to see what you'd like to share about them and about your experience with them. Whereas in a past version of myself, I would have been like, I don't care about like, I don't have a relationship with your kids. I have a relationship with you. And like, that's like, what are you talking about? And one of the things that I want to continue working on into the future is a lot of my attention and energy going toward this little being? Yes. Is she consuming my whole identity? No. Have we grown together, and are we continuing to grow together? Yes. Do we also have distinct identities and relationships and things that we like and don't like and do or don't do? Like, yes, all of this. So I want to keep growing in my, like, the possibilities of who I am as a person, while I'm also supporting this little person to learn and grow and figure out who she is.
Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that, I am learning more and more, isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about, what would it take for me to go? It's a 5.5-day retreat, getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest. If the idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up, but now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons, DrGertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat.
Beautifully said. I love that. I love it. And it's, quite frankly, the essence of Rewrite the Mother Code in so many ways. And what you're saying, right, is like, oh, I am this role. I am putting my energy here, but as I'm putting my energy there, like, she's just on automatic learn and grow because, there's so much wired in for her to do that. I am going to choose it for myself as I am her mother, as I am, looking at other aspects of my life and how, they're going to play out, and my relationship with my partner and all of that. But, focusing on, and I love even going back to, the reading that you did for yourself in this transition was for you. It wasn't, it wasn't for Lyla Rose, not that you can't do one for her. It wasn't just for you as a mother to her. This was for you, the big you.
Yeah, here. And it's funny, I didn't even realize that it was going to be for me until we were starting. I was like, oh, this is for
Yeah.
me. Oh, great. What a blessing. What a blessing. Oh,
Well, and we
I
need
want to
those
add,
reminders, and having other people say that, like, this is for you. Okay. Like, we kind of sometimes need to be pulled out of that space. And that's okay.
I want to share two more things that are related to this thought.
Yeah,
I
please.
was talking about this with my community last night at dinner. And so last night or yesterday afternoon, we were going to, one of my friends was singing in a choral concert.
Mm-hmm.
And we went, brought the baby, and she slept basically the whole time. Like we are the first people in that circle of friends to have children, to have a child. And so someone else reflected that they appreciated that we are clear about that, like we're not putting our lives on hold. And it's not like sacrificing ourselves for the benefit of this child. Like and it's not like, oh, we're bringing you to your first concert, like choral concert. Like, no, we're going to the choral concert and we're bringing you along with us. And the ethos is like, we're including you in our life. It would be a different matter perhaps if she were like disrupting the concert, and we'd like there'll be more choices for when she's awake longer in the day perhaps. But even still, like some venues going to be appropriate for young children? Yes, we love that. Are some not? Yes. And sometimes will we want to go on a date, just the two of us, and not bring her? Yes. Like all of these things, like are some things are we going to bring her to for her interest? Yes. Like all of these things are possible. And the baseline is like, okay, how can we all have a great time and expand our whatever it is that we are expanding, our sense of community, our appreciation of something. Like, so anyway, we got reflected too that our friends are observing us as like modeling a way of parenting, a way of that's like we're continuing living our lives. And we simply have, do we have new considerations? Absolutely. And that doesn't mean we're going to not go on adventures.
I so love how you're describing this. And Rich and I called it, we're inviting a child into our life, right?
Yes.
Like we're not, bringing a child in to then make it our life, I guess is, he or she, our life, is exactly. But I love the part about how you're leading the way, right? Because without people seeing that this is possible, like we can create this, and just seeing a different paradigm, a different way to do it that is full transparency, I think is more expansive and allows for more possibility. And I'm always going to be pro anything that includes, learning and growing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that includes you in the picture, that isn't all just child centered, because I don't think that's healthy for anyone. But our culture seems to think that's, the way we should go often, or too often. And it's easy. And as you have experienced, it's easy to get kind of lulled into it and to think like, oh yeah, this should be my world now. And there are ways that she does need to very much be your world. And that's beautiful, but she's not your whole world. As you just acknowledged this trimester, I mean, she was much, much more your world for these, last 3 months than she will be for the next. And, each for a while, 3 months there's a lot that happens over 3 months. But it doesn't mean it doesn't continue forever. It's because it can and does.
I want to share one more
Please
little
do.
anecdote.
Yes.
It's related to my own, kind of like seeing my own learning and growing opportunities in the midst of parenting this tiny being. So I had 2 instances, and I talked this over with my partner. This is how I came to this insight. There were a couple instances yesterday that other people were holding the baby, and I didn't like how they were holding her. And what I mean in this case was like they basically they didn't act like I act with the baby, like making eye contact, talking to her. Like those are things that are very strongly in my practice of how I am with her. And it's rare for me to be holding her and not like engaging or including her. So I was like, ooh, that irks me and I don't like that. But I didn't say anything at the time. And I talked it over with Ryan afterwards. And the thing that he said that helped me come to my next conclusion was like, because like we were like, okay, well, I was at first thinking like, oh, okay, do I want to like gently give an invitation? Do I want to give any feedback? Do I want to like suggest that people do such and so? Maybe. But ultimately, Ryan said, seems like there's a yearning there. And then I was like, oh, that's my yearning, not necessarily hers. And like in both of those instances, it's not like she was crying or upset. Like she was content to be held and didn't
in this
seem
way,
distressed
in this other way
at all. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's my hunger to not only be held, but also to be seen and to engage and to be understood. Like that's mine. And I like totally wholesale projected on her. And there's not like a problem with her being held and not engaged every second. Like that's gonna need to be okay. And I can learn to be okay and soothe my inner child. Be like, I see you. I see you. I see you. And I hear you, that you are hungry to be seen and known, and like, and I love you. If I can still choose whether or not I want to say anything to anyone ever about how they're interacting with my child, and I'm sure I will at some point for various reasons, but yeah, like I can also allow her to have different kinds of relationships with other people and not freaking micromanage everyone. So like, and soothe myself when I need to, and acknowledge my own yearnings and keep working on pulling apart when the yearnings are mine versus like when I think there's something missing for her. So that was my
well, that's yay for bringing in yet another like pearl of wisdom. And I swear we haven't like, predetermined these perfectly reflections of Rewrite the Mother Code, but I am very happy to see them in action in this way, Elizabeth, really, because what you just talked about, it sounds simple, but it also is very complex, and takes a fair amount of self-awareness, maybe a lot of self-awareness, and social emotional intelligence, if we want to, name it that way. And that you have a partner that's in tune and aligned with that also, so that when I can't quite see it in that moment yet for myself, where maybe I'm acknowledging like I'm having feelings or I'm having a yearning, he was able to step in and say that. And rather than you get defensive or a myriad of other responses that we could have, to his suggestion of what, it's something to consider. It's like, oh yeah, like what? And then he takes you on a whole different thought trajectory that, and none of them are right or wrong, right? Like for you to have standards or opinions or, thoughts about how you want people interacting with your child and is of course okay. And at the same time, like, let's add to this. They're like, oh, but what am I feeling in this moment as I see that interaction? Is that distinction between her yearning, projecting my yearning onto her. And who knows? I don't know if you said this, but there also is the like, well, that can't possibly be right what that other person is doing because I'm other best, right? Like I give her the best care. And how dare somebody else think that what they have to offer, just naming all the things, that do mostly unconsciously kind of swirl around in there when we experience something like what you're talking about. It sounds so, in some ways, like mundane and benign, like, oh, so I had a reaction to somebody holding my baby and being with them in a way that isn't my norm. No, it just that, like, and look how much I learned from that. And, and you can take that further. We can bring that into a coaching session and look at like, and then we can give you what you need and, and see more so that now you're opening the door for your growth and development, your experience to expand and her world to expand. Right. Like you said, it's like, oh, gee, yeah, I still need to have a protective eye. I'm not going to let anything go down that like really isn't okay. We're not talking like, yeah, let her have any experience. Like, no. But once we check out that she's safe, like you did, like she seems to be comfortable and safe and she's not squirmy or fussy or, anything, like maybe this could be okay. What a beautiful moment that became, right?
Yeah. Wow. And again, like those moments past, kind of like circling back to like the idea of describing everything or like memorializing anything, like these moments passed in a few moments, like a few minutes, a handful of minutes, and like the richness that I have received from like taking the time, like, wait a second, something is going on here, is worth paying attention to. What is this? Like, because I've talked about it with Ryan, I've now talked about it with you. I'm probably going to talk about it with my lab and on my assignment pass tonight. But yeah, like it's worth repeating.
Yeah.
For me, that's one of the ways like repetition is totally a tool for learning. And I really want to practice and honor that, like what I've learned so far, and remind myself that, I'm not done yet.
No. Nor will I be.
I said yet. I said, I know. I'm gonna be done.
Better. We just have to underline it. Wow, it's so beautiful, Elizabeth. And that's why every time I'm like, well, we'll see. Like, I don't know how long we'll continue these conversations, but for the time being, we're keeping going. Because when I think about the journey, I mean, we didn't start recording until like maybe June. So maybe it's been 6 months, and look at all that has transpired. Right. But I mean, we've been working together longer than that. So I know the journey, but just putting it in this form. Because as you said about modeling for your friend group, being the first to do this and showing them something different and something that then they can maybe have more choice in how they, decide to go about this whole experience. I'm hoping this reaches and touches a whole lot of people, and you being willing and vulnerable enough to, come on and share. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's so truly a blessing for me.
I never want us to end, but we're going to end this one.
We're going to end this
with
one.
So many great nuggets, right? But I'm so glad that we got right on it, because you're still at this juncture and in your transition from fourth trimester into I think we should still call it the fifth trimester, because you're still giving
Frankly,
birth,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
She's only 3 months old, just over 3 months old. So
I know. Oh gosh, it's insane. I love
it's pretty cool.
I love my life. I love my life. Yeah. I don't think I've said that out loud in a long time, but that is the truth.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And that's what I want for all of us, to love our lives in whatever way, whatever we're, venturing into and taking on. But I think showing what's possible and living what's possible, from a truly grounded, sensory, emotional, the whole mess of it and the whole beauty of it all adds up to loving my life, and that's possible. Pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Really cool. Not just pretty cool, really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, my dear. Well, until our next time, thank you so much.
Until next time.
Yeah, until next time.
What a beautiful episode with Elizabeth. Come on. Can you all agree that the way Elizabeth just keeps showing up, bringing what's both celebrating, which I think is really sometimes one of the hardest things in new motherhood, is to celebrate the wins and really acknowledge and take in, what has been going well, and small steps and little victories. And Elizabeth consistently is challenging herself to really be in the whole everything that new motherhood brings, right? And be in it from a space of growth and transformation and learning, that I continuously find really beautiful and inspiring. And this episode was no different. So please take the time to take some moments and really check in with yourself. What feelings did this evoke for you? What did it stir up with you? If you're a woman who has gone through, those first few months of new motherhood. And I know for me, it's been bringing up a lot of unfinished business, as I call it, around emotions and feelings, kind of both celebrating and being with some things that I think I just kind of brushed over. And there's also a way that Elizabeth is just in it so beautifully and fully that I'm allowing myself to be with some of the sadness of, oh, I wish I could do it again kind of thing. But that's all good. It's all really, really good. And if, the direct experience isn't anything remotely in your purview, there's always space for us to find where we can relate. Where is it that embarking on a new adventure, really being stressed, really being confronted with, how do I make some big decisions and choices that seem little but aren't, and what do I do in the face of family and friends when they challenge those decisions, or I'm doing something that's out of the norm or different from what is our cultural norm, and how do I navigate that? And I think Elizabeth brings to the table some really beautiful ways to do that. And I'm blessed and lucky that we get to do it together. These are really not interviews, they're coaching sessions. And, this has been really also really adding to the depth of the coaching that she's continued throughout this. And I feel very blessed and privileged to be with her and on her journey. So if that sparks any interest for you, wherever you are in your mothering journey, I'm here for you. Please reach out. You can always find me on Instagram at Dr. Gertrude Lyons, or you can find me at my website, www.dr, and that's Dr. Gertrude, Gertrude, Lyons, Lyons.com. See you soon. Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to Rewrite the Mother Code. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women, well, actually everybody, men included, to find it. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com, and sign up for my newsletter. I'll see you next time.